Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. So today we are going to be doing a little bit more inking, as I think I mentioned previously in some other videos that I've been really liking inking recently. It might be because of Inktober, or maybe it's just because I found a way that I don't have to feel so pressured about using ink and stuff or pens. But yeah, let's go through the materials. Both the pens that I'm using today are the Uniball Vision needle. The black one in particular, and it's gonna be the one I'm using the most for today's inking process, is actually the micro version, and then the one with the gray kind of barrel is kind of the fine version, which is a little bit on the thicker side. I'm not too sure if it labels the millimeters on here, so I don't know exactly the size difference, but I do like using the black one a little bit more. Just because I personally really like using needlepoint pens. I just like the consistency and how the ink rolls out, but there are some materials or paper surfaces that these pens don't like to stick on. This pen is waterproof, by the way, so if I wanted to do washes or color afterwards, I can do that. Unlike some of the markers markers or pens that I've used in the past, which are not waterproof, so I usually have to do line work at the very end. But today, since we were just focusing on inking, I don't really have to worry about either of those. But yeah, so like I said, the pen doesn't really like all surfaces, and that's kind of the reason why I use the kneaded eraser to kind of minimize the amount of graphite or debris on the paper as much as I could. So I took a kneaded eraser, lined up the sketch as much as needed, and then I have enough visible so that I know where to put the lines and stuff. And yeah, I'm just drawing Shu Yamino, which is another VTuber, and because they have kind of I think it's a cafe collaboration project or something for Halloween. I wanted to draw him in that kind of outfit. It's kind of more I don't even know, vampire-esque kind of outfit for Shu. So I think all of Luxium is something Halloween costumes. So I think Vox kind of looks more I don't know, a mercenary or a knight or something. I think Ike kind of falls in the similar area, but he kind of looks like a scholar. He kind of has a monocle and kind of has that kind of more, I don't know how to explain his look. And then we have Mista, I think he's a werewolf. And then, or Fox? I'm not too sure. I think him and Luca are the ones that have animal features, and then Shu kind of has more closer to what I would think maybe modern day vampire would look like or something. So yeah, that's what I am drawing today. And the reason why I'm even doing this session is actually because the previous session that I did of Layla, I used my dip pen, or kind of using the G pen nibs kind of thing. And I know a lot of people don't have access to those kinds of pens, and I know some people think in order to join Inktober or to do kind of the Inktober challenges and stuff, you need to have to use actual ink. But you can use ballpoint pen, which I was planning on doing today, but I decided to opt for this because I wanted to have more flat black areas. So that is why I'm using needlepoint pen. But any kind of pen that you would like to ink with could help a lot for just learning how to ink more traditionally. I know some people are doing the challenge digitally, some people are doing just other challenges that's going to be a month long, so you can build up a habit. So I'm going to be a little bit, I don't know, kind of updating you guys up until the last day of Inktober, which happens to be on a Monday, which is Halloween as well. So I am participating in Inktober. I've been doing small doodles in my sketchbook. So they range from either half a page, which is about 5 by 7, or leaning towards a post-it note size kind of doodle. So I did miss day 7, I believe. No, day 8. Day 8 is the day that I missed, but I decided to make up that time a little bit. So I think as I was doing the Masaki plush making video, as well as just making the plush in general, I spent so much time on it, but I didn't realize that I didn't do Inktober. I think it's also because I've been doing running errands in between, so I really just forgot about it. So I did Nina and I did Millie for day 8 and day 9. Day 10, which is the one that you guys are gonna see, or no, it's gonna be the one that I'm gonna be doing when you guys see this video. So the drawing of Layla and the drawing of Shu that I've done already, they are not going to be part of my Inktober. I just wanted to do separate drawings that are much, I was going to say much larger scale, but doing it on a 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper isn't too much of an upscale. But maybe I'll do another one, maybe for next Monday or something, where I can actually do a close-up of a character and we can get really into like the nitty-gritty detail instead. These ones are kind of fun because I'm kind of focusing on creating value with the lines, because if I'm drawing like a whole outfit, most likely there is more values being involved and I would like to differentiate them a little bit. But when we get to like close-ups of objects or faces, we can kind of play around with how we want to fill up areas. So I know a lot of people do like hatching, some people do stippling. I haven't done stippling in a long time, so could be fun to visit once again. I used to do like portraiture with stippling, so you just take like a like some kind of pen or anything that can make a mark by just literally tapping dots on the surface, and like the closer the dots, the darker the image gets, and then more farther away the dots are, the lighter it is. So it's kind of like similar to just hatching, but you're just using dots basically to cover the surface, and I think it's a fun way to add value. But for this one, similar to the one I did with Layla, I added red, kind of like my pencil lead on top to create some softer areas, also just to bring some color to Shu. And I was thinking like maybe I'll pull out a purple pencil crayon and do that, but I actually really like the red with the black for these, and I don't know if it's because I specifically sketched with the red, so like it kind of hides a little bit of those pencil lines a little bit better. But yeah, I kind of flip-flopped a little bit when deciding how I wanted to ink Shu. So another reason why I usually don't like inking is that I have a hard time translating what I want via ink, because unless it's something like ballpoint pen, usually ink is just like a flat black and then you can just get line variation rather than making things look lighter and darker via kind of like opacity. So like using ballpoint pen is very similar to using graphite, except that you can't erase. So I kind of wanted to use graphite for today if I wanted more of a more rendered, softer look, like how I use like my graphite pencils, right? But when I work with pen, I try my best to think in a more like cell shading kind of way. So you would have saw in the beginning when I was doing Shu's hair, I was trying my best to block out the highlights, but then there's some areas where I added lines to separate pieces of hair, but if I color it all black, the lines will disappear. So I have to make sure that if I want something to stand out, there has to be either like a bar of a highlight right next to the line so that the line doesn't get lost, or I just have to completely get rid of it. I think it becomes more apparent when I'm working on his jacket and his pants. Sometimes when I have like little seam lines on the fabric, on the left side I will make it touch with the rest of the value, so pretend it's like just a matte black. And then on the right side, I will leave like a sliver of white so that we can have the seam still show through. So yeah, that's like something I like to do. I'm not too sure if there's like a better way of doing it. Also, I decided that instead of making things just like completely solid and then white, making it like look really jarring, I did do a lot of hatching just to kind of fill in some of the areas where he has kind of like more of a mid-tone, if that makes sense. He actually has a lot of mid-tone in his outfit, so I tried to make sure that the shadows were like the darkest areas or any areas of black, so like his hair. I also made I think part of the jacket, I'm using some flat blacks, and then I'm kind of almost letting it fade out a little bit so that we have a little bit of a gradation and it kind of conforms with the form of the jacket, so we have a little bit of volume. And it's just easier to do that if I'm doing it via hatching rather than just doing solid black shapes, which you can totally do. But I think that's like people say like soft shading versus cell shading. So when you're cell shading, because the shapes and the color that you're probably using is a little bit more jarring to the eye, it's very important to figure out where you're placing said color for the shadows and lighting, because they become so apparent that wrong placements make things look a little bit weird. With soft shading or like painting and stuff, you kind of have like areas to kind of fuss around with, because you can have that soft gradation or you can have that transition that kind of makes the object look a little bit more voluminous. But with like cell shading, things can look flat really easily. Some people do a really good job. I know, like, even in like animes, if you watch them very closely, sometimes like even though they will read flat because you're literally doing flats and then flat shading on top, they still do a good job of like creating weight for certain objects or creating depth for objects just by doing the cell shading of the shadow really well. So yeah, that's why I think like when I was working with coloring a long time ago, I wanted to do more cell shading, but then when I get lazy doing cell shading, it becomes weird. Like you can tell like, oh, you didn't really put effort, or you kind of just did like one full shadow on top of the entire thing. I don't really know why I went on a shading tangent, but yeah, I kind of had a lot of fun working on Shu. There is some anatomy issues, and I think I didn't really think this through. I think I was a little bit more cautious when I was drawing Layla the last time. But the 8.5 by 11 paper, it's long enough that I tend to skew the body a little bit. So I didn't notice it until after I was finished filming. So Shu's head, it's an okay size compared to, I think, the shoulders and stuff. But once we get to his waist and his hip areas and his leg, I didn't know that I was gradually, like, he kind of looks like a Dorito, if that makes sense. I know Shu has larger arms anyways, but I kind of shrunk his abdomen area and his legs, as well as I made it thinner. So yeah, it's probably because the paper's a little bit longer, and if I'm sitting at the end of my desk, the head's gonna look normal because it's receding back into my desk, and it's gonna look okay because the closest object to me looks the right size now, and it's not. It's a little bit too small, a little bit too thin, but that's okay. I don't think it's too bad that I would hate the drawing. I actually really like the one I did of Shu, and I like the one I did of Layla as well. From, was it last week? I'm not too sure. Like, I'm not too sure if it was from last week, but yeah, I'm not too sure what I'm also going to be doing for next Monday, because I miss painting a little bit. I haven't painted in my sketchbook for, I don't even remember when was the last time I painted in it. And it might be because like Inktober is forcing me to, you know, keep up a habit of doing inking that I haven't done painting. But for some reason this week and like last week, my sleep schedule has been absolutely horrendous. I think on the days when I was working on the Masaki push, I slept at 5:30, which is bad because it means I'm waking up later in the day. Like, I think in order to not feel like a zombie in the morning, I woke up at 11 for one day. The other day I woke up at 9, I think. Yeah, 9. Oh no, I woke up at 8. My brother woke me up at 8. So I got 3 hours that day, and I had to go out that day. So I felt really tired. I don't know. And then previously, like before those days, I've been sleeping around like 3:30, 4 o'clock, which isn't good. 3, I would say, is like when I should go to sleep, if that makes sense. Like, I can sleep earlier if I want to, but like 3 is kind of like the maximum. So exceeding it is probably a death sentence for me, but that's okay. I hope hopefully after this one, because right now even I'm filming the voice recording, it's like 2:30 in the morning. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like if I just lay down, I'm gonna like fall asleep instantly because I know I'm probably really tired. But right now I feel like I'm okay. And it might be because like as long as I'm working on something and keeping my mind occupied, I don't feel sleepy. Because one thing I noticed is like whenever I went to do errands, or I was like kind of having like a family day with my parents and my brother, anytime I'm in the car, I don't know why, like I'm always in the front seat, like next to the driver, whoever's driving. So like I'm in the passenger seat because I think when my dad's driving, my mom wanted to sit in the back because she wanted a little bit more room, and then my brother sits in the back because he didn't want to sit in the front with my dad or they're gonna bicker. So I sat on the front, but I kept falling asleep because if my body is idle and I'm not physically doing stuff, like if I'm sitting at my chair, like I'm physically not really that idle other than like my hands and my eyes. I'm usually not like tired, but like once I'm sitting and literally doing nothing, I feel so sleepy. And it's mostly in the morning because I get headaches and like motion sickness too. So yeah, especially like from car rides in the morning. I think I gotten like a lot better because like when I was younger, I would actually like vomit or feel car sick. But like I think more recently, I just get headaches from it. And I don't like reading in the car because that would really kick my motion sickness into high gear. But yeah, I went on a tangent. As for the drawing, I am just doing some light shading for the rest of Shu. And I think at this point when I was shading him, this is when I realized like his waist is a little too snatched. I know he's wearing more like a corset near his waist to hip area kind of placement, but it's a little too small regardless, just because his body and chest area is just significantly larger than the rest of his body, and then I kind of made his torso, I think, a little bit too short in comparison to his head. But yeah, enough rambling. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and hopefully next week maybe I'll do a painting video. We'll see, because I either want to do gouache painting again because it's been a while, or I want to do watercolor painting. But yeah, here's Shu done, and you can kind of see that anatomical issues. And then here's Layla, and you guys can see the difference between the ink quality, or like how dark the ink is from these pens versus the dip pen on the left. But yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye!